Mark Fisher Colbury,
Here.
Elena Flowers,
Present.
Judy Gasson,
Here.
Larry Goldstein,
Here.
David Higgins,
Here.
Steve Julesgaard,
Here.
Pat Levitt,
Here.
Linda Malkus,
Here.
Dave Martin,
Here.
Christine Miaskowski,
Here.
Lauren Miller Rogan,
Here.
Adriana Padilla, Joe Panetta,
Here.
Al Roulette,
Here.
Barry Selleck,
Here.
Michael Stamos,
Here.
Oz Stewart. Saw Oz earlier, he might be on mute. Oz. We'll come back to Oz. Jonathan Thomas,
Here.
Art Torres,
Here.
Christina Bori,
Here.
Carol Watson, Diane Winokur. I'm going to go back to Oz. Oz, are you there? I know I saw you. You might just be on mute. Oh, he's not on. Okay. We have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Go straight to the action items for today's agenda. First up, consideration of new appointments and reappointments to the Grants Working Group. Gil.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So good afternoon, everyone. So we are bringing for your consideration some new nominations for appointments as well as reappointments to the Grants Working Group. And so of the 4 new nominations, our goal in making these recruitments was to focus on filling gaps for our educational programs. As you may be aware, we're issuing RFAs on Spark, Bridges, research training. So we want to add additional members there, and also to diversify our Grants Working Group as we engage in this. And so we identified folks from, in this specific cohort, from HBCUs as well as some Latino serving institutions that I think will help round out our educational program. So just to quickly review the nominees, Dr. Renato Aguilera from the University of Texas, El Paso, which is my alma mater. So glad to have him nominated. Dr. Ruby Broadway from Dillard University, Dr. Corinne Coulombe from Brown University, Dr. Checo Rory from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. For reappointments, we have Dr. Mick Bhatia, Dr. Doug Eaton, Dr. Anthony Hollander, Dr. Margot Mayer-Prochelle, Dr. Theo Ross, and Dr. Robin Wright, who are all being reappointed for 6-year terms. And so we're seeking approval of these nominees from the board, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Hold on one second, Gil. Are there any questions, first of all, before we get to the nominees that Gil has mentioned? I want to add Christine as well, who is joining the GWG as a patient advocate member. So thank you, Christine, very much. Any questions about any of the board members that, or GWG members Gil has proposed? Do we have a motion to approve them?
So moved. Martin.
Moved by, sounded like Isabel, and seconded by Dave Martin. Are there any questions or comments on this item from members of the board? Any comments from members of the public? Hearing none. Maria, will you call the roll, please?
Heiko Duelhawk, Dan Bernal, George Blumenthal,
Yes.
Linda Boxer,
Yes.
Allison Brashear, Deborah Dees, Anne Marie Dulege,
Yes.
Isabel Dudon,
Yes.
Leon Fine,
Yes.
Mark Fisher Culvery,
Yes.
Elena Flowers,
Yes.
Judy Gasson,
Yes.
Larry Goldstein,
Yes.
David Higgins,
Yes.
Steve Julesgaard,
Yes.
Pat Levitt,
Yes.
Linda Malkus,
Yes.
Dave Martin,
Yes.
Lauren Miller Rogan,
Yes.
Adriana Padilla, Joe Panetta,
Yes.
Al Rolette,
Yes.
Barry Selleck,
Yes.
Michael Stamos,
Yes.
Oz Stewart, Jonathan Thomas,
Yes.
Art Torres,
Aye.
Christina Vori,
Yes.
Carol Watson, Diane Whitaker. The motion carries.
Thank you, Maria. On to item number 4, which is consideration of the Spark Concept Plan. Kelly Shepard will present.
Hi, Maria. Do I have your permission to begin sharing my screen?
Yes, please do.
Okay, thank you. Let me get this set up and in presenter mode. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the board and members of the public and CIRM team. I'm here to present for your consideration today a renewal for the Spark program, a concept updated for 2021 and beyond. The Spark program is an acronym for the Summer Program to Accelerate Regenerative Medicine Knowledge. Why isn't my screen advancing? Let me see here. Sorry about that. Okay, I have to use my mouse. Sorry about that. So before I go into the new concept, let me just begin by backing up a little bit and going over the fact that CIRM has made a number of investments across 5 core pillars. Now, the 3 depicted at the top, the discovery, translation, and clinical stage programs, represent our research and development portfolio. However, CIRM has also funded an education and training portfolio programs as well over the years, beginning from high school level students, where really the goal is to introduce them to the opportunity and the excitement in the field of regenerative medicine and the potential that it offers as a career, to undergraduate and master's level programs, creating a technical workforce, and to PhD, postdoctoral, and clinical fellow programs to create future leaders in the regenerative medicine field. More specifically, these have fallen into these 3 core initiatives. The Research Training Awards, which was actually the first funded initiative that CIRM offered back in after the passage of Proposition 71, it focused on training pre-doctoral, postdoctoral, and clinical fellows. And there were 940 of those CIRM scholars trained over a period of 9 years. The second major training initiative, which is still active at this time, are the Bridges Awards, which focus on training undergraduate and master's level students. And then, of course, the Spark Awards, which we'll be talking about today, which focus on high school level training. Now, we did bring concepts to renew the research training and Bridges programs to you in February, and that was approved at the time. And we mentioned that we would be bringing back the Bridges program concept for your consideration in the near future. That near future is today. So just a little bit of background about the Spark program in particular. So as I noted, CIRM has offered funding opportunities to support training and workforce development in stem cell-based research through our education programs, which we abbreviate as EDUC. Historically, CIRM has supported high school internships through 2 different requests for funding, or RFAs. The original was called the Creativity Awards. That RFA was issued in 2011. And a revised version of that program was issued in 2015, and the program was renamed the Spark Awards. For the purposes of my presentation, I'm just going to refer to this entire program as Spark, although the name did change in 2015. As was the case then and now, federal funding opportunities for high school level research training, particularly in stem cell research, are limited and disparate. CIRM is proposing to relaunch the Spark Awards EDUC 3 to allow continued support for high school level research training in regenerative medicine. We will be proposing some modifications to the SPARK concept, however, to you today to bring the program into alignment with Proposition 14 objectives and to better reflect the present challenges and opportunities. And I will be going over those in more detail in my presentation. But first, I wanted to give you a little bit of context about the SPARK program, which has been going on since 2012 and some of the outcomes to date. So the objective of this program has really been to provide high school students with hands-on training in stem cell research through summer internships and to inspire their interest in regenerative medicine. These programs are structured by supplementing and integrating within what were existing summer programs sponsored by eligible California institutions, but with a focus on regenerative medicine. And as I mentioned, there were 2 RFAs in the past that supported this program, the TC1 grants, which were the Creativity Awards, and the EDUC 3 grants, which are the SPARK Awards, most recently issued in 2015. Those were 5-year awards, and the last of those programs are ending this summer. Historically, there have been 10 of these high school internship programs sponsored across California. You can see them depicted here on the map. Currently, 7 of them are still active, as I mentioned, through the end of this summer. Now, while every one of these programs is a little bit different and unique to its institution, they all have some core features in common, which is what makes them SPARK Awards. So they all involve some preparatory courses and workshops that take place at their home institutions. And then the students go on to perform a full-time summer research internship in a laboratory, basically full-time for about 8 weeks. In addition to these programs, the students participate in special activities where they have some direct interactions with patients and they do some community outreach through social media, which at their age, they're all very good at. At the end of their summer internship, they all come together for an annual conference. So all of the SPARK students across the state come together. They present their research on posters with one another and their parents and their families and the CIRM team and celebrate their accomplishments together. Oops, sorry about that. So since this program was initiated and the first grants began in 2012, there have been 480 students who have come through this program. Now, I do want to mention that we began, these programs have always submitted annual progress reports to tell us how things went over the year. But in 2015, we were able to start actually tracking some of the outcomes and longer term outcomes of these students who have come through the program. So while I don't have a data set for the complete 482 students, we do have data from a little over 200 of them beginning in 2015. And several of these trainees are actually still in high school because they do their internships during their sophomore or junior years. And many of those who have gone on to college are still actually in college. However, I do have data from 171 alumni who reported college attendance. And 40% of those are actually attending universities of California throughout the state. 26% of them are attending another school in California, such as Stanford, Caltech, or Cal State University. And about a third of them are attending schools or universities outside of California, including some Ivy League colleges you see listed there. Of 141 who have declared majors, 96% of them have declared majors in biology or a closely related STEM field. Just to give you a little bit more color about this, I put the attendance of California colleges on the left pie chart and those attending colleges outside on the right. As you can see on the left, with the blue shading, those are all the University of California schools. As I mentioned, the majority of alumni who are attending college in California are attending University of California schools, although there's a sizable proportion attending Stanford and Cal State universities as well. And you can see on the pie chart on the right that about 40% of the students attending college out of state are actually attending Ivy League schools. So, sorry, I didn't
May I ask a quick question? I ask
Sure.
you a quick question about these data.
Sure.
And do you have numbers on how many of the, what fraction, what percentage of the students, the participants who have graduated from high school in the last, say, year and a half have attended college? I'm just wondering what the dropout rate, distractions, they become professional sports or professional sports
Right.
candidates, et cetera, what?
Right. I don't have the exact numbers of that, but I can tell you that of the 171 that I'm showing you here, this was data from about 215 alumni. And the numbers that I was not able to determine whether or not they were in college, most of them were still in high school. And there were a few that we just don't know about. And I have to say this program has actually been dormant for over a year because it wasn't able to be offered last year because of the COVID restrictions. And so these data that I have are from the end of 2019. And we're hoping to get an update when the next progress reports come in at the end of the summer. But for as far as I can tell, the great majority of these students are going on to college after they graduate. And
Great.
most
We
of
would
them
certainly
are
hope
currently
so.
into the
Yes.
sciences.
Great.
Okay,
Kelly.
That's wonderful. We should look carefully at what happened with those who maybe have not, whether they have a viable alternative for continuing their education.
Uh-huh.
Kelly,
Good.
Isabel
Yes.
here. I have some questions about demographics that you may have
Okay.
later in your presentation, or
Okay.
should I ask them now?
I don't have any slides on demographics. I have looked over the information that we have about them, and I can probably answer some questions about that.
Okay, so obviously we would like a breakdown from racial ethnic minorities as well. And the other thing I'd like to know in terms of the participating high schools that they come from, if you're able to determine and access if these are in, in low income communities where they come from, these schools where they might not necessarily be offered this opportunity, and whether and what we're doing about that. I mean, we can discuss that later, but I'd certainly like to see where they're coming from and if all schools across California are getting the information so that some kids who might be fabulous scientists in the future don't even know the program exists at this stage of their high school careers.
So absolutely. So I don't have that information in front of me today, but we do track the high schools that all the students are coming from. So we have that information and we can report that to you at any time. So the way we track this information is once these grants are issued, which they have been, they become active and the programs begin recruiting the students in the winter, usually the summer, before the summer, they do their internships. Once the students are recruited into the program, the grantees fill out what's called an appointment form. And this gives us the name of the student and their high school, their birth date. And it also asks for some demographic information. It is all optional. So the information that we have is all self-reported. So I am able to generate a list of all the different high schools and the students and what high schools they came from. We do not collect at this time socioeconomic information on the appointment form, so I can't really speak to the status of that. However, I do believe that if you read the grants, they are very focused on trying to recruit diverse cohorts, and that's a major goal of these programs. And I can tell you a little bit about some of the demographics from the reported data if you're interested in hearing that now. Did you want me to discuss any of that now, or
could you give us a quick rundown, especially because we're always talking about pipeline, and
yes.
if we're not creating the opportunity for pipeline, and in fact we're not requiring certain data to be collected, then we're not really helping to advance our argument for or against.
Okay, so I looked at the data that was reported on appointment forms for 400. It was reported on 411 of the appointment forms. Female to male is 65% female, and the remainder indicated male. For Asian American, it was 55%, African American 10%, multiracial 9%, white 17%, Pacific Islander a little more than 1%. And for ethnicity, we have 41% Latino or Hispanic and about 60% non. So those are the categories that I was able to glean by looking at the demographic data from what was self-reported.
All right. Well, I think at some point in time, we really need to look at if, in fact, some of the underrepresented schools are actually getting into the mix, and what are the answers to make sure that they're raising the issues amongst their kids and trying to help them move into the sponsoring colleges, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I think we need to do as much as we can to support the development of these pipelines out of underserved schools.
Very much agree. And many of the discussions that the board has been having over the past few months on improving our ability to track and monitor for diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's part of this program as well. And I will be going over that when I discuss the new concept. And I'm happy to answer any more questions about that as I can as we go through that.
Yeah,
Right.
Kelly, can I just to answer in part Isabel's question anecdotally. So Isabel, Art and I pretty much every year go to the poster session that is at the end of the program, which is perennially one of our favorite events. Sorry, hold on.
His too.
To cheer.
You know, I've been on mute the whole time. The dog just knows when you put it back on talk when to start acting up. So, as I was saying, this is perennially a wonderful event, and I can report that one of the things that is so striking about the group every year is the diversity and makeup of the kids, which is very suggestive of the fact that we are getting a tremendous representation from all diverse communities, which is precisely what you want. Similarly with the Bridges program. And it's one of the things, as Kelly suggested, that we certainly emphasize, and the program managers at each of the sponsoring institutions does as well. So I think we're doing a very good job on that. I do echo, Isabel, your idea that we should be getting more specific data on the high schools, or compile it to present, and Kelly will do that. So just wanted to let everybody know that.
And I appreciate that, Jonathan. And also, though, to David's point about fallout or drop off, or because I think that challenges in some low-income communities and for the students who come out of these programs all along their career trajectory and through college, they bottom line need some supports. Otherwise, they too fall out of this wonderful path they're on. So I'm just wondering if it's some way, somehow along the way, I see we track where they go to school maybe, but do we lose sight of them over time? Or do we help them when they might be having problems staying in school? Just other thoughts that might be considered by Kelly along the road in trying to make this a super successful program, because I think it's fabulous.
Thank you, Isabel. We are thinking about those things as well, because as you know, we are supporting trainees along different stages of the pipeline, and we definitely see differences in the demographics as people progress through. And I think now that CIRM has gotten some experience in managing some of these programs in the longer term, we're going to be able to get a real better understanding, at least within our own programs, where some of the attrition might be happening and what more we can do to try to address that.
Thanks,
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So now that I've given you a little bit of history about the program, I'd like to begin to discuss the concept for the renewal of this program. I'm just going to go over the objectives again, which are to inspire, educate, and motivate high school students to become involved in CIRM's mission of accelerating stem cell treatments to patients with unmet medical needs, to provide summer training opportunities, and to broaden the participation in stem cell gene therapy and related research to high school students who represent the diversity of California's population and who might not otherwise have opportunities to take part in summer research internships due to socioeconomic constraints. And finally, to foster a commitment among trainees to the goal of accelerating the delivery of stem cell-based and gene therapy treatments to patients with unmet needs. Okay. So again, the SPARK training program structure, as I described before, is that a qualified program director based at the awardee institution will be responsible for management and coordination of all activities supported by the program, as well as the recruitment of diverse and qualified students. They will involve hands-on mentored summer research at host laboratories at the awardee's institution, which are nonprofit research universities or research institutes or companies. They will include preparatory courses and workshops to prepare the students for their internships, which will be approximately 8 weeks over the summer. They will continue to propose activities to engage the students with patients and community outreach. And we will continue to support the annual Spark Poster Day so that the students can come together and network and celebrate their accomplishments with themselves and their families. Now, while we're maintaining the established platform because we believe it's successful, we are proposing several updates and improvements along the lines of what we've been discussing, and also some additional changes to bring it into better alignment with Proposition 14. So first, we're proposing to expand the allowable scope of research projects beyond stem cell science to also include gene therapy and related regenerative medicine research in accordance with Proposition 14. This is exactly the same type of scope change we proposed in the Bridges and Training Grant Awards earlier that you approved, and this brings this program into alignment with Proposition 14. We're proposing to allow the institutions to partner with another organization to increase the availability and diversity of host laboratories in which the students can work over the summer. And consistent with what we are doing with all of our programs and the discussions that the board has been engaged in over the past few months, we're providing more formal requirements to maintain and strengthen the focus of these programs on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're going to be more formal and instructive in requiring an alumni tracking plan to enable annual assessment and reporting on some of the things you asked about and more, depending on how the board discussions and strategic planning go, including college acceptance, choice of major, and any position taken by alumni of the program after high school or after college, including, as Dr. Martin suggested, finding out if anyone is dropping out and perhaps the reasons why. And finally, we are proposing some small changes to the budget structure as well as an increase in the overall award amount to better reflect the present economy and to afford more flexibility for recruiting and appointing a diverse cohort that includes socioeconomically disadvantaged students. And I'm going to spend the next couple of slides going over those specific changes that I addressed in the last bullet so that you understand the rationale for the allocation that we will be requesting at the end of my talk. Okay, so let me just walk you through this slide. It looks like there's a lot of information here, but basically this is a chart that shows what costs go into an individual Spark Award. So each Spark Award supports up to 10 students per summer, and the costs of each award are divided into the categories you see alongside the left. So basically, there is an amount of up to $2,500 that is the stipend that goes directly to the trainee as compensation for their essentially full-time work in the lab for 8 weeks over the summer. There's a mentor stipend, which compensates the individual in the host lab who is working day-to-day with the student to help them out. There's a small research-related fund, which is a small supply budget that goes to offset the costs of the laboratory that's hosting the intern. And then there's a travel allowance of $750 to support the trainee attending the annual conference that I mentioned and sharing their poster. So the direct cost awarded to an individual trainee is approximately $4,750. Now, in addition to those trainee costs, there is a program administration portion of the budget, which is up to $2,500 per student. That covers the personnel and the cost of administering the program. It also supports the patient engagement and community outreach activities that I spoke of that the students participate in. And then there's indirect costs of 10%. So the total amount of the award per trainee, including the trainee associated and the administrative costs, is just under $8,000. Now you can see that that was the budget for both 2011 and 2015. So there have not actually been any adjustments to these awards since 2011. So for the 2021 concept, we're proposing some increases that will raise the rate approximately 22% so that the total cost per trainee will be $10,175. And these costs are mainly attributed to by an increase in the stipend amount that will go directly to the trainee, raising it from up to $2,500 to up to $4,500. And this is to bring it in alignment with minimum wage. And then the second is we have not really taken away the mentor stipend and research related funds, but we're moving them into the program administration portion of the budget, which you can see down below has been raised from 2,500 to 4,000. And on my next slide, I'm going to go into the rationale for these changes. So,
Kelly, can I ask a question? Kelly, it's Pat Lev.
yes, of course. Mhm.
The indirect cost, I mean, it's not a lot of money, but just as an I mean, you know, NIH indirect costs on training programs is 8%.
Mhm.
And that's supposed to cover all administrative costs, right? That's what indirect costs are for. So
Mhm.
I'm a little confused about the $4,000 plus 10% on indirect costs. I'm just thinking about what the NIH does for their training programs.
All of our training programs since I've been at CIRM have been 10%, and I don't know if someone from grants management wants to explain what might be different about how we calculate that compared to NIH. But the program administration is mainly, in my experience, is covering the salary support for the people who are administering the program director, any coordinators or mentor helpers with that, and it also supports the preparatory workshops and things like that that they're holding for the students, as well as the patient engagement and the community outreach activities.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, or did you?
No, it answers the question, but it's still confusing to me about how those dollars are, why they're being allocated the way they're being allocated. But and I'm just thinking about, I think the increase in stipends great. I'm just thinking about the numbers of students. What's the estimated numbers of students that we be supported in any particular summer, given this budget?
Each of these awards can support up to 10 students per summer.
10 students per summer. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thanks.
Okay.
Hi, it's Christina. Can I make a quick comment?
Sure.
I believe high school sort of internship programs are excluded from the indirect base calculation for federal awards, and then I think it does make sense to separately fund the administration if that's the standard by the recipient organizations as well.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or? Okay. All right. So I would just like to give you a little bit of rationale for why we're proposing to increase those two categories to the extent that we did. So first of all, raising the stipend cap from 2,500 to 4,500 brings it into closer alignment with minimum wage. And we strongly believe that this will increase the program director's ability to recruit and maintain students from a diverse and socioeconomically disadvantaged backgrounds. For one reason, this makes the pay comparable to an alternative summer job. So someone doesn't have to choose between, taking a job to help support themselves versus working in the lab over the summer. And it has been the experience from my speaking to CIRM's, the program directors of these programs, not only from this program, but also from the Bridges program. And also recent studies are suggesting that the adequate pay is absolutely critical for reducing barriers to participation for underrepresented minorities. So we believe that offering the ability to offer a higher stipend is going to even help the program directors recruit and maintain students from a more diverse and socioeconomically disadvantaged background. In addition, we have learned that from our experience in managing these programs that the mentor stipends and research funds are not always helpful or even necessary to running these programs. So rather than a program being forced to pay a mentor who perhaps doesn't want the money or administer a small $500 research fund to a lab that perhaps doesn't feel that they need that, we redirected those funds to the program administration, which will allow the program directors to have more flexibility in how they apply those funds. They can still use them to support a mentor or a research-related fund for a student if they feel that would be helpful or necessary, but they can have a little more flexibility in how they use these funds towards achieving a stronger program overall. Okay. Oh, shoot, sorry. So in sum, This is a summary of the proposed budget for the 2021 concept. We would be asking for an allocation to support 10 new awards, which would be $5.1 million allocation. Each of these individual 10 awards would be a maximum of $509,000, and supporting 10 trainees each, that would mean 500 new students could come through this program. These would be it would be a 5-year grant, so 5 summers. The direct student costs, which includes the stipend and travel to the annual conference, is $5,250, and the program administration and overhead costs would come to $49.25 per student, which brings the total cost per student per year of $10,175. And again, this is a 22% increase in the award amount since 2015 when the Spark Awards were issued. But however, as I showed you, it's really a 22% increase since 2011 when the program was initially launched as the Creativity Awards. And finally, the requested action then is for the board to approve the proposed Spark training program concept with an allocation of $5.1 million to support up to 10 new Spark Awards, each for a 5-year duration, which will lead to 500 new trainees having the opportunity to work over the summer at a maximum of $509,000 per award. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any other questions that I can for you.
Thank you very much, Kelly. I should note to the members of the board that this was presented to the Science Subcommittee and approved unanimously to bring to the board for consideration. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Oh, goodness.
Okay,
So who was that?
I was
David in San Diego.
Okay, Art and David, thank you.
Okay, are there questions or comments by members of the board?
Yes, I want to make a very quick comment. And that is that when I helped establish this program back in 2011, Kelly, thank you so much for your excellent presentation and taking into consideration some of the board's questions that occurred in the past. And let's keep in mind that some of these students go through this program when they're a sophomore or junior, so they may not go to college for another year. So we have to be careful about how we track that. Secondly, this program and the Bridges program are some of the favorites of the legislature because they see the impact that it has, not only in inner cities, especially, for example, in my hometown of Los Angeles, where we have a Francisco Bravo Medical Magnet School, which really draws the kids from East LA and other parts of the inner city to participate in this program. But also it gives a sense of hope. And I think JT said it very well. When we go to these poster meetings at the end of each session, you're just overwhelmed and so inspired by these young people. And to know that we're contributing in a small way to create a future for stem cell scientists in our state is just very, very awe-inspiring. So I want to say I strongly stand behind my motion to approve this report.
Thank you very much, Art. Well said. Other comments or questions from members of the board? Are there comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I too would like to, Kelly, thank you for not only your presentation, but your expert stewardship of this outstanding program, which is
Actually, JT, there is one member of the public. So when you're done, we can just go there.
okay. And just to say, as Art did, how this is a real gem in our overall program that is truly going to set up. You see these kids going on to major in the sciences and will be without question something that helps fill the pipeline as the field continues to mature. So yes, a comment from the member of the public.
It's from phone number 650-255-2860. There's a hand raised. You can speak if you'd like.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Dr. Jolie Proudfit. I am a descendant of the Pechanga Band of Luiseño Indians, and I am the Department Chair of American Indian Studies at California State University, San Marcos. and the director of the California Indian Culture and Sovereignty Center. I think this work is amazing, and I applaud everyone involved and engaged in this effort. And I really want to underscore how important it is to not exclude our American Indian students from participating. I know there's no intention of that, but we have a very diverse student population, very hard to reach student population. We have over 110 federally recognized tribes in California, with about 80 tribes seeking recognition and the 2 largest urban Indian populations. So it takes some strong intentionality and partnerships to be sure that our American Indian students, who are the first citizens of this state, to be included in these wonderful opportunities. I run the only California Indian Culture and Sovereignty Center at Cal State San Marcos, which supports the state of California and our students interested in research that engages and supports tribal culture and sovereignty. We have the largest American Indian student population per capita, and we, again, have the largest number of reservations in our county. So while I know we do have a Bridges program in our biology program, there really is no intentionality of supporting our American Indian students to be engaged in this process. So I would like to encourage an effort and some intentionality in that effort. And also, as this group looks to make a stronger commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, that the board also consider adding an American Indian research scientist, such as someone like a Dr. Amara Siva, whose background in biotech and who's a member of the Los Coyotes tribe, would be a wonderful addition to your group and organization to make sure that we are inclusive of all of our students to participate in this effort. And again, if you need help with that, the California Indian Culture and Sovereignty Center and our Department of American Indian Studies stands ready to assist you in that endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you for that very important public comment. We really appreciate that perspective and very much are looking to be as overall inclusive as we possibly can. So thank you. Any other comments by members of the public?
There are not.
Okay, hearing none. Maria, can you please call the roll?
Haifa Abduhak, Dan Bernal,
Aye.
George Blumenthal,
Yes.
Linda Boxer,
Yes.
Allison Brashear,
Yes.
Deborah Deese, and Marie Dulege,
Yes.
Isabel Giron,
Yes.
Leon Fine,
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colbury,
Yes.
Elena Flowers,
Yes.
Judy Gasson,
Yes.
Larry Goldstein,
Yes.
David Higgins,
Yes.
Steve Julesgard,
Yes.
Pat Levitt,
Yes.
Linda Malkus,
Yes.
Dave Martin,
Yes.
Christine Miskowski,
Yes.
Lauren Miller Rogan,
Yes.
Adriana Padilla, Joe Panetta, Al Rolette,
Yes.
Barry Selleck,
Yes.
Michael Stamos,
Yes.
Oz Stewart.
Yes.
Yay, we can hear you. Jonathan Thomas.
Yes. Good. Yes.
Art Torres,
Aye.
Christina Vori,
Yes.
Carol Watson,
Yes.
Diane Winokur. Thank you. The motion carries.
Okay, thank you very much. On to the next item, which is consideration of the supplemental funding for existing Alpha Stem Cell Clinic awardees. I believe, Jen, you're presenting on this item.
Yes, JT. Give me one moment. Share my screen. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, members of the board and public. I will be bringing to you today a proposal for supplemental funding for the Alpha Stem Cell Clinics Network. So as you recall, in January of this year, The CIRM team presented an update on the Alpha Stem Cell Clinics program, which is a $40 million investment in personnel training and patient-centered care, which has successfully accelerated cell and gene therapy clinical trials in the state. There are over 105 trials supported since 2015, and that's actually an old statistic. I think that's from January. I think now it's 164, with 82 from industry sponsors and 23 from CIRM-funded industry and academic sponsors, and over 57 million in industry contracts. The first 3 awards issued by CIRM in this program were in 2015 at City of Hope, UC San Diego, and UCLA, UC Irvine. Well, and then in 2017, we issued 2 more awards at UCSF and at UC Davis. So today we're coming to you as all 5 of the existing Alpha Clinic awards in the portfolio have ended or are approaching the end of their award period. And there is a call in Proposition 14 for an expansion of the Alpha Clinics network. And this new concept proposal will be brought to the ICOC along with the strategic plan rollout with a targeted program launch in mid-2022. Thus, the Alpha Clinics program directors have reported that bridge funding is critical to support personnel and continued operations as a network during this period as the awards end and funding ends and possible new opportunity with an expansion award in 2022. So this slide shows an overview of the 5 awards in the portfolio with the start and end dates, the total award amount approved by the board, the award status, and the potential gap in funding. The first 2 awards, as you can see, at City of Hope and UCLA have ended, and the final 3 are anticipated to end in the later half of 2021. I did want to note that the two awards at the bottom at UC Davis and UCSF were launched in 2017. And these are a little unique as they were issued with operational milestones, meaning that the end date of the award is actually determined by when that milestone is achieved. And in this case, although that the awards were contracted in November to end in November 2021, we've received updated progress reporting from these 2 awardees that they are anticipated to actually achieve their milestones early in May of 2021. Thus, you'll see that the potential gap in funding could be up to 12 months. So today we're coming to you with a proposal of a 1-year supplement award from June 2021 to May of 2022, when we anticipate a new RFA could be launched for expansion of the network. This supplement would support talent retention and program activities that are specified in the original RFA. These activities include coordination of clinical research and manufacturing teams, regulatory support, product processing, biospecimen collection and coordination, management of patient and public inquiries, and fee-for-service contracting. In determining this proposal for funding, we looked at the average annual expenditures of these awards, which include both direct and facilities costs, which is $1.36 million. Thus, today we're proposing a supplement award of $680,000 total cost with a 1-to-1 awardee matching requirement. Awardees will be required to submit a justification for funding with a detailed budget for these critical activities to maintain their key personnel and operations. And awardees with project periods less than 12 months will be required to reduce their budgets proportionally based on their average expenditure burn rate. So today we're proposing a total allocation of $3.4 million for 5 supplement awards. Here's a summary of this proposal. The average annual expenditures, again, are $1.36 million. A total supplement award proposed today is $680,000 with a matching requirement by the awardee. The number of eligible awards for this supplement are 5, with a total request today of $3.4 million. And so our action today is requesting that the ICOC approve our proposal to allocate $3.4 million to a supplement for the Alpha Clinics network. And JT, I'll stop there to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jen. And before I open it up to questions, I would similarly like to report that this item was robustly discussed at the Science Subcommittee and as presented here, ultimately recommended for consideration and approval by the board. Do we have any questions or comments by members of the board on this item? Okay, hearing none, do we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Moved by George Blumenthal. Is there a second?
I second, yep.
Seconded by Anne-Marie Dulege. Any comments on the motion by members of the board?
Should go. Should go.
It's Gwen, I'll go this with him. I said you'll grab.
Not sure if that was a comment. A hot mic aside. Do we have any comments from members of the public? So before we vote, just a comment. Obviously, this is another one of our highly successful programs that we are very proud of, and is really a network that was the first of its kind in the country and continues to be, and is continuing to enroll many patients both for CIRM funded projects as well as non-CIRM funded projects. I think, Maria, we are ready to call the roll.
Yes. Dan Bernal,
Aye.
George Blumenthal,
Yes.
Linda Boxer,
Yes.
Anne-Marie Dulege,
Yes.
Isabel Dudon,
Yes.
Leon Fine,
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colbury,
Yes.
David Higgins,
Yes.
Steve Julesgard,
Yes.
Pat Levitt,
Yes.
Dave Martin,
Yes.
Lauren Miller Rogan,
Yes.
Adriana Padilla, Joe Panetta, Al Rolette,
Yes.
Jonathan Thomas,
Yes.
Diane Winiker. The motion carries.
Thank you. And Jen, thank you for an excellent presentation, and to you and all involved in this outstanding program. Thanks again. We now come to a most important item on the agenda, which is consideration of adoption of the January, February, March, and April ICOC meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved. Stamos.
Thank you, Michael Stamos. Is there a second?
Second.
Yes.
Seconded by Pat Levitt. Thank you very much. I doubt highly there's much comment, but do we have any questions or comments by members of the board on this item? Any comments from members of the public? I think if we were all in the same room, we could probably do a voice vote on this one, but since we aren't, I suppose, Maria, will you please call the roll?
I would love to. Haifa Abdulhak, Dan Bernal,
Aye.
George Blumenthal,
Yes.
Linda Boxer,
Yes.
Allison Bashir,
Yep.
Deborah Deese, Anne-Marie Dulege,
Yes.
Isabel Duran,
Yes.
Leon Fine,
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colbury,
Yes.
Elena Flowers,
Yes.
Judy Gasson,
Yes.
Larry Goldstein,
Yes.
David Higgins,
Yes.
Steve Julesgard,
Yes.
Pat Levitt,
Yes.
Linda Malkus,
Yes.
Dave Martin,
Yes.
Christine Niskowski,
Yes.
Lauren Miller Rogan,
Yes.
Adriana Padilla, Joe Panetta, Al Rolette,
Yes.
Barry Selleck.
I will abstain since I wasn't in those meetings.
Okay. Michael Stamos,
Yes.
Oz Stewart,
Yes.
Jonathan Thomas,
Yes.
Art Torres,
Aye.
Christina Vori, Carol Watson,
Yes.
Diane Winiker. Motion carries.
Thank you, Maria. On to the next item, consideration of applications submitted in response to the Translational Research Projects Program announcement. This is the application review subcommittee portion of the meeting. Oz is conflicted here, so I will do my best to step into his large shoes and run this item. I believe first we have, yes.
I just wanted to let, if there are some board members who had conflicts with later this afternoon, just in their calendars. If you're not part of the application review subcommittee, you don't have to stay for this portion of the meeting. That said, if you'd like to, we'd love to have you. So whatever fits into your calendar.
Thank you, Maria. Begin with a presentation from Gil.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Let me share my screen to show the presentation. Okay, and if you can't see it for any reason, just let me know. So I am presenting to you the recommendations from the grants working group related to our translational review. And so this is the first under Prop 14 of the translation program that we have had. We haven't had it in a while, but our intent is, now that we have relaunched our recurring core funding opportunities, and the translation program is a key part of it, that we will be offering it about 3 times per year going forward. The translation program fits right between our discovery and clinical programs in that they take applications and projects that have identified a single product candidate and takes them through translational activities to achieve a pre-IND meeting if they're a therapeutic or other pre-submission meeting. And I'll explain a little bit more about that. So the overall objective here is to support promising stem cell-based projects that can accelerate the completion of translational stage activities that are necessary for advancement to clinical study or broad end use. And so the TRAN program offers support for up to 4 different types of products. So it can be a therapeutic, a diagnostic, a device, or a tool. For therapeutics, we allow award duration of up to 30 months. For all the others, up to 24 months. And of course, because each of these product types have different requirements and activities that would go into the translation of these products, we also have different maximum award amounts for each, with the therapeutic having the largest allocation of up to 4 million if it's a cell or biologic, or up to 2 million if it's a small molecule. The CIRM translational program also, as mentioned, takes projects that have identified a single candidate, if it's a therapeutic, where they have shown disease modifying activity, and thus demonstrating that they're ready to engage in translational activities for device diagnostics. A prototype with a proof of concept is required similarly for any kind of tool. And once they are done with the translational activities, the expected outcome following these awards is that they complete their pre-IND meeting or pre-submission meeting. If it's a diagnostic or device, if it's a tool, that they do a design transfer to manufacturing here, because the expectation is that the tool is something that should be commercialized. This is another view of largely the same thing, again, showing the TRAN program sandwiched between the discovery and Clin 1 funding opportunities. So for anybody that is developing a project with CIRM and taking it through our funding opportunities, somebody that has achieved that single candidate through the DISC 2 program can come into the TRAN 1. Once they leave the TRAN 1, they can go on to our clinical opportunity of Clin 1 to begin their IND enabling development work. So it gives you maybe a better sense of the specific types of activities that are conducted and what the outcomes are that are expected for these projects. During the grants working group review, we provide guidance to reviewers. And so here's just a summary of some of the guidance that was provided in terms of how to focus their review. I'll mention what the review criteria are, but just to say, and a reminder to them, that the review criteria are the same for all 4 product types. So we're not distinguishing them in terms of necessarily how we review them in terms of their deployment, right? Of their overall significance and feasibility and so on. Our goal is to identify the projects that are most likely to achieve the objective of the program. There's no need to reserve or balance award slots for any of the product types. So if we get more of one or the other, it is really more about the merit than it is trying to balance the numbers of products. And then also a reminder to account for differences in product types when evaluating the activities and proposed outcomes. The review criteria that the GWG reviewers used are shown here. Does the project hold the necessary significance and potential for impact, meaning what value the project offers and is something that is worth doing? Do they have a sound rationale? Do they have a good plan and design to carry it out? Is it feasible, meaning do they have the appropriate infrastructure, resources, and team to carry it out? And then lastly, does the project address the needs of the underserved? I will note that that last review criterion is new, and it's new to this group as well, but it's one that we have presented to the board previously in our efforts to increase our attention to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so this 5th review criterion has a couple of sub-questions in it that I thought would be worth showing, just so you know what they're looking for. So here in their assessment is, does the project plan and design adequately address and account for the influence of race, ethnicity, sex, and gender diversity? And would the project outcomes inform the development of a product or a tool that serves the unmet medical needs of the diverse California population, including underserved racial ethnic communities? Another element that is new among these applications was the addition of a data sharing plan. So we asked applicants to include a plan of how it is that they're going to make available the data that's generated from the project. And so including things like what types of data they would produce, how the data will be managed, what data they will share and in what ways. For example, what kind of repository they would include it in. And if they're not sharing data, what justification they have for not sharing that data and the timeline and so on. So this is another element that the grants working group assessed as a first time for this program. The scoring system for the TRAN applications is based on a scale of 1 to 100. So anything that scores between 85 and 100 means it's recommended for funding if funds are available. Anything below that is not recommended for funding. And so these are all based on the median of all individual grants working group member scores. Another somewhat new element is the inclusion of the minority reports. So under Prop 14, any application that is not recommended for funding based on the score by the GWG, but which has 35% or more of the members scoring to fund the application, meaning that they scored it an 85 or more, must include a minority report. And so a minority report is included in the review summary and provides a synopsis of the opinion of reviewers that scored the application 85 or above, to the extent that we could decipher that opinion from those reviewers. And just to note, the summaries don't necessarily contain any new information that we haven't provided before. We have previously provided the perspective of all reviewers, noting the strengths and weaknesses of the proposal, and also provided all the statistics related to the score, the score range, and so on. What we're doing differently now under Prop 14 is basically taking those comments and putting them in the form of a summary at the end of the report to highlight the fact that 35% or more actually scored it 85 or above. Okay, so this table summarizes the grants working group recommendations for this cohort of applications that were received. There were 13 applications that were reviewed. 2 of them received a recommendation for funding based on the median score. So the total applicant requests for those 2 applications would total about 8.6 million. We have an allocation of 60 million in terms of available funds for the year. So we're well within those amounts. And so I'm just going to provide a brief overview of the 2 applications that are recommended for funding by the GWG. So the first one is application TRAN 1-12245. And so this one is entitled Development of Novel Syn-Notch CAR T-cell Therapy in Patients with Recurrent EGFRB3 Positive Glioblastoma. And so this is for patients with glioblastoma that is recurrent. And the approach here and the candidate is human T cells that are transduced with a lentiviral vector that encodes an anti-EGFRB3 Syn-Notch that is then primed to induce an FA2 IL-13 receptor alpha 2 chimeric antigens receptor. And so the idea is that this CAR T cell therapy, which is a gene therapy as well, goes to the site of the tumor, recognizes the EGFR receptor in order to prime it, and then that induces the other 2 CARs, which can then locally attack those tumor cells that are expressing either the FA2 or IL-13 receptor alpha. So it's an interesting strategy that these applicants have developed. And so the total funds requested for this is 2.66 million for a timeline of about 1.5 years for that award. Let's see, it did change. Okay, and then the next application that is recommended is TRAN 1-12258. And so the title of this one is CAR TNM Cell Therapy for Melanoma Targeting TRP1. And so this is for a unresponsive or melanoma that's unresponsive to traditional treatments or where there has been a relapse. It is an autologous therapy that uses naive memory progenitor T cells that are genetically modified to express a CAR that targets the tyrosine-related protein 1 or the TRP1. And so the idea behind this is that this CAR is infused and patients that have melanoma cells that have a high expression of this TRP1 in their tumor cells would be candidates for receiving this therapy. And so this would also be in patients that have already gone through immune checkpoint blockade and have not responded. So that is a summary of both of those, and that ends that presentation. I will also share with you, just give me a second so I can show the spreadsheet of the all the applications. So you can see that as well. Okay, so here's in green the two recommended applications that are shown, all the ones that are not recommended for funding, and then just highlighted in red are the ones that had the accompanying minority report with them. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Gil. Refresh everybody's memory, the sequence on this is first we ask the members of the board if they would like to elevate any of the currently not recommended for funding projects to tier 1. So do I hear a motion to elevate any of the projects not recommended for funding, which are those under the green line, to elevate those to tier 1 for consideration for funding?
Pardon me.
This is Dave Martin. I'd just like to make a comment. When I saw this, I looked very carefully at the 12309, since I know a fair amount about this disease, et cetera. And I was surprised that it was not higher. But then I read carefully the critiques, and I decided that the critiques were probably valid and it needed more work, essentially. And I think that was just sort of reassuring to me. Here's something that looked very exciting. But the analyses, I thought, was quite good and probably most appropriate.
Okay, any other comments or questions? We don't have a motion here, but just if anybody like to comment on this.
Jonathan, not on that, but I am very interested in us considering TRAN 11250, which came in at an 84, so not too far off the mark. Read the letters that were sent in. I obviously, unlike David, can't argue or question or push back on the science and the merit of that. But a couple of the things that I did like about this were the idea that it met some needs in the underserved communities, particularly in the African American community that has a higher burden of multiple myeloma. And while some people might, in the vernacular, call this a crapshoot, I am about sometimes science doing that. I think that when it comes to the underserved and research, there isn't enough done. And as a result, when the opportunity comes to do that, while the science might be just a shade off, or someone doesn't quite see that it's ready to cook, or however they review this, I like the idea that if we can push up something that is going to perhaps impact the lives, the quality of their life, and even the mortality of communities of color that have been under-researched, then I like to take a shot at it. So I would like to recommend that we sincerely look at that 12250 again, or
Okay,
however, motion to move forward.
Okay, so Isabel moves to move that application, which is 12250, up to tier 1 for consideration for funding. Do we have a second?
Steve Julesgaard, I second that.
Seconded by Mr. Julesgaard. Okay, James, in voting for this motion, would the board, if it voted yes, would this be an approval of funding, or is this an approval of moving this up to tier 1?
It sounded to me like Member Daron was moving it into tier 1 for consideration on an individualized basis. But if I'm mistaken about that, and she intends to move to approve it for funding, then we should clarify the motion and make sure Mr. Julesgaard is in agreement.
Okay, thank you, James. So Isabel, which of those two were you moving with respect to this project.
Thanks for the clarification, Jonathan. I actually would like to move it to approval.
Great.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to approve this application. Are there questions and comments from members of the board?
Hey, JT, this is David Higgins. I have a question when you have time. You have an opening.
Please.
I'd like to ask Steve if he could chime in a little bit with a little bit more detail of why he's supporting of this. My concern is not this is a bad grant or it was a bad proposal, but that there's one that has exactly the same numbers associated with it. That I sort of feel like if we do this one, then we've got to do that one, and so I would like to hear from Steve why he's enthusiastic about it.
Mr. Julesgaard.
Certainly. So over the years, we have had situations where the score has come close to the score of 85, but didn't quite make it. And in some cases, we've revisited, the scores that are just under 85 and decided that the application had enough merit, we should fund it anyway. So let's just start with that. So 85 is not necessarily a sacred number. It's the number that the GW or we use basically as a cutoff point. But that doesn't mean that we can't consider applications that are less than that. So the reason that I'm willing to support funding this is largely based on the letter that was written that Doug Ian sent out relating to this particular application from Lily Yang at UCLA. And I thought she made a very compelling case in that letter for this ICOC, or in this case, the Application Review Subcommittee, actually consider funding it. So I was really impressed by the thoroughness of that letter and the points that she made in support of the project.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. I think we have Larry next and Anne Marie after Larry.
Thank you. I guess I want to start by asking a question to make sure I understand something correctly here, where it says in the spreadsheet, number of GWG votes, and it looks as though only 2 members voted to approve it and 13 voted not. And so I'm a little worried that we're overriding what was a sound scientific review, but where for some reason there were significant reservations at the end of the day. And, I'll agree with what David Higgins said, which is, when you start pulling grants out with similar scores, you've got yourself a very slippery slope. And one thing that we're doing that would ordinarily not happen at an organization like the NIH, for example, is we don't seem to have a budget for how much we're willing to spend in this round, because ordinarily you'd use your budget limits to decide how far down a priority list you would go. And we're kind of missing that. And I'm a little worried that since we have $5.5 billion in the bank, we're going to be a little too generous at the start, and we're going to pay for it down the line. So I'm uncomfortable approving this.
But actually, if I may say, JD, if you don't mind, I had the same, I was puzzled in the same way that Larry was puzzled, because a grant that has an average and a median of 84, and with 13 no, that's just simply inconsistent. You only see that way below in the list. So I went to the original document, and actually, if I'm not mistaken, it's discussed on page 11. And I wonder if there's not a typo here, and it should be reversed. At the bottom of page 13, I see what appears to be a mistake, 13 no and 2 yes. But when you look at the next page, the yeses are 12, 12, 11, 14, 13, and the no's are 2, 2, 3, 0, 1. So I'm just wondering if someone would clarify, and maybe there's just purely a typo.
Yeah, Gil, if you could comment on that and also address Larry's comment about what the budget is, which I think you mentioned in your presentation, but to reiterate what the motion is for TRAN projects this year, or this budget, this cycle.
Sure, happy to do that. So the budget for the cycle is, and actually for the year, which includes just the one cycle, is 60 million. So we're well within that amount. So there's no, it's unlikely that we would reach that limit. So we generally do have an amount, but it's for the year rather than for the specific cycle. As it relates to the numbers, the numbers are correct, but they just reference something different. So the 2 versus 13 represents the number of GWG members that scored an application an 85 or above. So 2 members did that, 13 scored it below 85, meaning they didn't think it should be recommended. The numbers that are along with the comments of the yes or no refer to the specific review criteria. So for example, with the question that they're answering there is, does the proposal have the necessary significance and potential for impact? 12 versus 2, that means that 12 members said yes, they believe it has necessary significance and potential for impact, and 2 said no. However, when it comes to the score, even though a reviewer may feel, yes, this has potential, this is addressing a significant problem, they may still score it below 85, either because they believe it needs more work or they could do something better. And I just want to say in general, I think the applications, both the ones that have the minority report as well as this one, I think fall into the camp that, reviewers didn't see anything that was a fatal flaw or anything significant that they thought was wrong with these application from a scientific perspective, but they did identify several things in the application that they thought the applicants should address, and it's something that they would like to see again. I think with the expectation that the applicant would resubmit and make some of those corrections. And with that, I should also note, because I think I may not have mentioned it, is that the next application deadline for the TRAN program is in August, again, with the idea that we want this to be a recurring opportunity to continue to capture both new projects as well as projects that may have not made it in the last cycle.
Gil, is it the feeling of you and the team that these projects could be improved and would be in better condition from a GWG perspective if they came back in August having incorporated the suggestions?
So that would be the recommendation from CIRM, that given the availability of a deadline coming up in August, that the applicants do have an opportunity to make improvements that would make the projects that much better and kind of maintain a merit threshold for them in terms of getting the best possible project coming forward.
Okay, thank you. Other comments or questions from members of the board?
Yeah,
Anne-Marie?
thank you so much, Gil, for your explanation. That helps a lot. At the end, we're left in this uncomfortable situation, at least I am, and that's why we have this responsibility. On one hand, we really only exceptionally want to go in a direction that is not the one recommended by the CIRM. On the other hand, here, there is a discrepancy between the GWG votes that in general recognize the value of this program, but at the end, when it comes to vote below the line in some ways. And I appreciate your explanation, which is, well, let's resubmit with a little bit of improvement. But that makes our decision more difficult, I guess, maybe more subtle in some ways. Just wanted to make that comment. I don't know if others feel in the same situation I am. I really dislike to vote in a direction that is not the one recommended by CIRM in general.
Isabel here. Anne-Marie,
Yes.
when you suggest against what CIRM has recommended, are you referring to the grants group that recommended.
Absolutely, because the GWG is obviously not only the external recommendation, but as I understand it, these external recommendations from advisors have been reviewed by the CIRM employees and evaluated, and then that's the final recommendation.
Right. Well, there's always a little bit of rebel in me. So I appreciate scientific input. I appreciate all of that intellect. But sometimes when I see that there's something missing in gaps in services, I tend to go for the human as opposed to, sorry, I still think there's a worthiness here. And however it wants to be proposed back to the people who turned it in, they want to clean it up, or we're going to, I don't know. I just think that I appreciate all of the scientific input and still sometimes like to vote against that. When I sat on the board of the California breast cancer research program, I did the same thing. We would get the scientific review, but sometimes when I saw that the community really needed to have a project like this to move itself forward, to learn more, to get more quality out of the, out of research that doesn't seem to be coming, I would push things like this. And I will continue to do so, but I really appreciate your, how you see things. But this is why patient advocates sit here, right?
Absolutely. That's why there's a variety of opinions here. And in this case, I think we're talking most likely either voting now in favor of this application or having it submitted again in August. And most likely, although no one can ever make any form of promise, most likely it will be approved.
So may I add something as an oncologist?
Please.
So I do see the point that this is an area of need, but as an oncologist, I know this is a very competitive field, and there are several companies that are working on autologous as well as allogenic T-cell therapies for multiple myeloma. So if the point is that we really want to get things to the patients who need this, which I completely respect that point, there are definitely alternatives are being offered. I guess my reservation about approving this when the GWG group said that gave it a score of 84 and they didn't feel that it's ready to be accepted yet is we're not looking at the full proposal and protocol to be able to critique it as the GWG group did. So the idea is definitely worthy, but maybe it just needs a little bit more work to be approved. So I guess I personally, as an oncologist, if that's what the GWG group recommended, since we are not able to judge the protocol or the proposal overall, then I would say maybe wait on it and follow their recommendations.
So thank you. I would just want to make the point that everybody, particularly for the new members, that as Steve mentioned, there have been numerous occasions over the years where the board in programmatic review, which is what we're doing now, which is set up to consider not only the GWG recommendations, but other points that may be viewed as important, that the board has moved projects that were not recommended for funding up to the top level at whether it's in TRAN, CLIN, DISC, or whatever. So just those who haven't been through this, just to make sure you're aware of that, and that the board is not required in any way to take all GWG recommendations if, as a collective group, it believes there are overriding considerations to approve something.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Yes,
the last speaker, is that a substitute motion to let the folks know to come back in August with a renewed?
Art, I believe you should not be commenting.
Oh, sorry, got it. A few of the perks of being a regent.
Any other questions? Yes, Larry.
Well, I'll take a guess at what Art's comment might have been, which is if we don't elevate it for funding now and basically ask them to revised so that it's a stronger proposal. It's not that it's never going to be funded. It's just going to be delayed a few months. So it's really not the end of the road for this project.
Other comments or questions by members of the board? Are there comments by members of the public?
I believe Steve has.
JT,
his
Mr.
hand
Jules
raised.
Guard has a comment.
Oh, we did. Oh, yes. Steve, sorry.
Yes, just in response to Larry's last comments. If we really believe that this is going to come back and be approved in August, then almost, well, it almost goes without saying we should approve it now, right? So if we fully expect it to be approved in August, then why are we waiting? So we put a few bills on the application. Larry?
I guess I disagree with that point of view, Mr. Jules Guard or Dr. Jules Guard. It's, it's been through scientific review. The group did find a number of weaknesses. We can't judge from where we sit how difficult it is to address those issues so that it's scientifically sound. And I guess I believe in taking that part pretty seriously.
Well, as JT said, this is programmatic review. So we consider issues just beyond science, in these discussions. Back to something that Anne-Marie was noting, when you look at the no votes on the 5 different criteria, the greatest number of no votes is on one, which is the proposal well planned and designed. And the vote, only 3 people out of the 14 that voted on that said no. So the no votes, when you go through this piece by piece by piece, are disproportionately much lower than the yes votes. And so what it's telling me is that this, given what we've got here, both the median being 84 and the mean being 83, is that there is a lot of scientific merit here. It's just that there are some fine points that I guess the GWG would really like to see. And from my point of view, as I said, when I read the letter that came from UCLA and Lily Yang, I was impressed with, the thought that they had put into addressing this organization in a request for funding. So.
JT, I want to point out that the PI is on the line and has her hand raised for public comment if that makes a difference.
Yes, thank you, Marie. I saw that.
Jonathan,
but before we get to that, I just want other comments from members of the board. Yes, Isabel.
I do want to let others comment if there are, but to Steve's point, yes, it was the letter that helped inform me to a greater degree. But once again, as I said, I was also very moved by the whole issue of the addressing underserved. And while maybe others may not think that is the most important criteria, sometimes for me it is. And I just had a long meeting with some research institution around multiple myeloma and its efforts to include the African-American community and to some extent the Latino community. But, just reminding me very clearly how there's still many steps to go to reach particularly vulnerable populations. And when you can see a strong report that recognizes that need and wants to serve it, and the science is there, basically, as Steve pointed out, I feel very strongly in recommending it. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you. Other comments by members of the board? Okay.
Hi, JT, this is Al Roulette.
Yes, Al.
I wanted to reassure other patient advocates that the conversation regarding unserved and underserved communities in the last 2 reviews have been quite rigorous. And in fact, have reached, I think, a point where we are really beginning to impact why underserved communities are not participating in some of the trials. And giving feedback to applicants that I think will make a difference. Secondly, my experience as a GWG member is that when there are recommendations that are made and an application comes back for re-review, it is not automatically approved. That there are oftentimes criteria that in the re-review, scientific criteria that I'm not qualified to completely speak to, that don't satisfy the second review of the application, and it's not approved. So my experience is quite different than what maybe is being implied, that if this went back, it would automatically be approved.
Thank you, Al. Other comments by members of the board? Okay, Dr. Yang, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good afternoon, the ICOC chair and the members. Thank you very much for giving a very thorough consideration and discussion about our project on behalf of our research team. I really appreciate that. And so I would like to take this opportunity to point out a few things. This extensive discussion about the GWG, the score system and the overall score at the end. And I think a couple of important things already laid out. So the scientific part, like this overall, I should say, point out it's overwhelmingly, positive about many aspects. There's a few, points being indeed, get pointed out. And as I stated in the letter, we actually did, improved since after the submission that's in February. And besides that, I want to really bring up a few new information, like since after the submission of the grant. Important event, occurred like in the field of the multiple myeloma therapy field. So in March, actually on March 27th, FDA approved this first cell-based gene therapy, ABCOM, from Celgene for treating multiple myeloma. It's the first approved cell therapy. It's an autologous cell therapy, as you may expect. It's personal treatment. It needs a manufacturing facility. It's really extremely expensive. It's priced over $400,000 per patient per treatment. And it's not available to all the patient need. And so the delivery can be delayed because every dose needs to be manufactured separately. So the delay may really delay the saving the life of patients in fast progressing disease. So the key new part of our project is that we're proposing here off-the-shelf cell therapy. I think somehow this point is a little bit missed, by part of the GWG, reviewer, when it's commented some of the criticism, probably, has a little bit of misunderstanding, is kind of evaluate the therapy as the same as the autologous, like the personal therapy. So I should say that this newly approved cell therapy, the FDA approved, really opened this time for the cell therapy for treating MM. But the current therapy have many limitations, really are kind of limiting the serving, for the underserved community. It's a high price, it's hard to deliver, it's not available to all the patients. In fact, it's only available to a very small population of the patient. And the therapy we're trying to deliver really try to overcome, all those limitations. Again, I want to emphasize it's off-the-shelf, cell therapy. And as pointed out, there are other lines of the off-the-shelf cell therapy and the development. Yes, correct. But they are all at a quite early stage at this moment. And the CIRM's mission is to speed up the delivery of the therapy, life-saving therapy to the patients. And for funding this project like early, it will save us, let's say, next funding period is half a year away. That will be delayed at least half a year, for developing a therapy that may be, becoming really available, available for the patient. So I also have my clinical collaborator, Dr. Sarah Larson on the meeting. So she may like to make some comments from the patient point of view, say that it's an urgent need for the patient to really need this therapy in place. So I also mentioned that for a fast, speedy, translation and development path, we decided a strong team and a good record in the past on TRAN 1 project. We formed the industrial partnership, to develop this therapy. That's a California-based startup company, focused on, this line of the technology and develop this therapy. Although multiple myeloma is not immediately on their pipeline, but as you may see from the support letter from the company, that they are, supportive of this project. They're willing to share the CMC, all those clinical developmental experience, and maybe later on at the stage, join the development of this one. So this will lay the path for a really fast translation and development of this therapy. I will close over here and really thank you for your attention. Again, I really appreciate for the ICOC's very thorough consideration of this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yang. I should point out that our public comment should be 3 minutes in length. That probably exceeded that. Obviously, the comments are important, but for future public comment here, please try to keep it to the 3-minute mark. Okay, we have Sarah Larson, public comment. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Sarah, you need to unmute your phone.
Actually, Sarah, before you begin here, we have a board question. Mark Fisher-Cole.
Yeah.
Has a question.
I'm sorry, I'm unmuted.
Yeah, Sarah, hold on
Can you hear
one
me?
second. Yes, we can.
I apologize.
We have a board member as a comment first before you begin.
Yeah,
So-
yeah. Thank you, Chairman. I didn't know if there's additional commentary that Gil might have that might further elucidate the vote that might be helpful at this juncture.
Why don't we hold that question till we get the second public comment here, and then we'll turn to Gil, if that's okay, Mark.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Sarah.
Yes, I'm the clinical PI and director of the myeloma program and immune effector cell program at UCLA. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak on this project. I'm very excited that there's a BCMA-directed cell therapy product available, but it certainly has limitations, both with respect to efficacy and toxicity, as well as its availability. And with the efficacy and toxicity, part of that has to do with the fact that there's a manufacturing time required. So by the time the patients can get the product back, their disease has usually further progressed, and it makes going through the therapy more difficult for them. The other potentially available off-the-shelf options have other side effects that wouldn't be involved in this product, things like graft versus host disease or more likelihood of rejection because they're using allogeneic T cells instead of iNKT cells. The other side of this is the availability, and it's for all populations. This would be able to reach the underserved populations, and even patients now are having difficulty with the availability of the BCMA-directed CAR T cell because the commercially available product has limiting manufacturing slots, meaning patients that are presented now for the therapy may not be able to get it for months. And the clinical trials with the other CAR T cells have limited slot availability. So it really highlights the need for additional cell therapies for myeloma patients, even though there are other options out there. And again, some of the strengths of this proposal that Dr. Yank highlighted, I think further show where this could have a place for our myeloma patients in California.
Thank you for that comment. Is there other public comment on this before we turn to Gil? Hearing none. Gil, could you address Mark's question, please?
Certainly. So maybe I can try to give you a little more flavor with some of the comments that relate to this application. I think, again, generally, there was some enthusiasm with the idea of developing an allogeneic approach. Certainly that was something that was recognized by reviewers, but I think given the recent approval of another CAR T, acknowledging that that is an autologous approach, I think what they were looking for was additional experiments that show some comparability. You know, the possibility that the one that has already been approved, if that approach works, could you develop that into an allogeneic approach? Of course, there's potential advantages of the one that is proposed because it has sort of a triple targeting approach in terms of what it can do. So I think there is promise, but also at the same time, there were some concerns related, for example, to insertional mutagenesis in hematopoietic stem cells that needs to be addressed in some of the studies. It presents a potential major risk factor in developing this because of the lentiviral approach that is being used. It was also noted that the data sharing plan was not adequate enough or non-responsive in the words of some of the reviewers, and they would like to see more related to that. There was also a question in terms of the targets for these for the CAR, because there are multiple targets. Some of them, in some cases of multiple myeloma, are reduced and or may become inactive or lost in some of the patients. So I think they would have liked to have seen a more discussion related to that. And so, I mean, I think those are points that the grants working group would like to see addressed in some way. But again, in general, there is certainly enthusiasm for having an allogeneic approach and the idea of creating an interesting triple targeting approach that could have an impact. So that's all I think that I can add to that.
Okay, thank you, Gil.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, members of the board, on this motion?
Yeah, this is Oz. Can I make a quick comment?
Sure, Oz.
With regard to the data sharing, I just potential.
Oz, you're kind of hard to hear.
Yeah, sorry, I'm doing my best. Can you hear me now?
That's better, yes.
I propose a friendly amendment to the motion. That's being that funding, if approved for funding, is contingent on an acceptable data sharing plan. Thank you.
Okay, James, did you get that?
I did. I believe Oz was making a request to the maker of the motion and the second about whether they would be willing to accept a friendly amendment that the approval of the award would be contingent upon the applicant agreeing to a reasonable data sharing plan.
Okay, Isabel's the maker of the motion. Steve is the second. Do you accept that friendly amendment?
Oh, absolutely. I find that very reasonable. I don't know if that's the only argument, if anybody else will accept that, but I do.
Steve?
So just really one quick question. Who will be the approver of an adequate data sharing plan? So whose authorization is going to be required in this particular case?
Steve, generally, when the board has imposed these kinds of conditions in the past, they've vested the CIRM team with the authority to make those judgments.
Well, this is mostly intended.
Yeah, I'm not sure we got that, Oz. Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, sorry, I got a lot back. I just said that was the intent of my motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
But James, by CIRM team, do you mean Maria Milan?
Correct. That Maria Milan as president would have the ultimate authority to make that decision.
Right. Yes. Then I accede to that request to amend the motion.
Okay, so we have the motion as amended on a friendly basis to include the data sharing element. Are there any other comments or questions from members of the board? Okay, hearing none. Maria, please call the roll.
Dan Bernal.
Sorry, Jonathan, are we voting on a review, going back to review, or are we voting on that it be accepted for funding with this caveat?
We're voting on your motion, which as I understand it, is to approve this grant.
Okay.
As modified by the friendly amendment.
Thank you.
Okay, Anne Marie.
Yeah, just very briefly to say that no matter what the outcome of our vote is going to be, I just want to say how comforted I am by how carefully we as a team are doing our job, which is not always to vote on the contestants from the ICOC, but to have an open-minded debate about pros and cons. And I'm sure, I mean, there's no clear answer to that. If there was one, we would not even have the debate. But I hope the public and the CIRM in general see that as an example of essentially the ICOC doing its job carefully.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Okay, Maria, will you please call the roll?
JT, I believe, wasn't Sarah Larson going to give public comment?
Wasn't Sarah, I'm sorry, what?
Wasn't there more public comment? I believe we had public comment.
She commented already. I don't know if she has an additional comment, but she spoke already.
Okay.
Okay. Maria.
Dan Bernal.
Aye.
Anne Marie Dulege.
Yes.
Isabel Duron.
Yes.
Mark Fisher Polvery.
Yes.
Elena Flowers.
No.
David Higgins.
No.
Steve Julesgaard.
Yes.
Dave Martin.
No.
Christine Miskowski.
No.
Lauren Miller Rogan.
Yes.
Al Rolette.
No.
Oz Stewart. Oz, are you on? Jonathan Thomas.
Yes.
That's it. Let me count the votes up. Hold on. Oz is coming back in. Oz, were you going to vote on that? Oz, you're on mute. Okay. James, can you help me with the counting? I believe the motion carries. Is that correct?
Yes, 7-5.
Thank you.
Yes, hello, this is Oz. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Oz.
I'm sorry if I'm going to throw a monkey wrench, but my vote was no.
The vote is no. Okay. Still think we're okay. Thank you.
Okay. So that project has been approved. Do we have any other requests to move any of the other items below the green level up to the green level for consideration for funding? Okay, hearing none. We move now up to the projects that have been recommended for funding, and would like to take each individually. Do we hear a motion to approve the first project there, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, if I'm reading that correctly, or is it 1, 2, 2, 4, 5?
1, 2, 2, 4, 5.
Okay, we hear a motion to approve.
So moved.
I think that was by Mark, if that was.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there discussion or questions on this item by members of the board? Is there any public comment? Okay, hearing none. Maria, will you please call the roll?
Dan Bernal,
Aye.
Anne-Marie Dulege, Anne-Marie.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Did not hear you.
Yeah.
Isabel Dudon,
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colbury,
Yes.
David Higgins,
Yes.
Steve Julesgard,
Yes.
Dave Martin,
I have to abstain because I can tell from the description who it is.
Lauren Miller Rogan, Al Roulette,
Yes.
Stewart, Jonathan Thomas,
Yes.
Carol Watson, Diane Winiker.
Maria, did I fall off the list somehow?
Larry, you cannot vote during the application review subcommittee. You can comment, but not vote.
Got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Maria, has the motion passed?
Just as well, there's several members that dropped off, so it makes it a little trickier. But I believe so. James, with the abstention, does it?
I believe we're going to have to hold the roll open on that because we don't have a quorum among the members who participated in the vote. So hopefully some of the other members will be able to rejoin.
Yeah, this is Oz. Maria, I think I missed my name.
Okay.
I'm a yes.
Thank you.
On this.
That helps. Thank you. I'm looking for. You can hold on for a second. I'm going to try and call a couple of the board members that dropped off.
Maria, I believe with Oz's vote, we are at quorum.
Okay, great. Thank you. So JT, the motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, now we're on to the last item, which is, what is that number, Gil?
It's 12258.
Okay, thank you. And you can see the description there. And this, as said, was recommended for funding by the GWG. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved. Smart.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second from other Mark.
Okay, second by Al Roulette. Questions or comments by members of the board? Is there any public comment? Hearing none, Maria, will you please call the roll? We have lost Maria momentarily.
No, yeah, for just 1 second. I'm just double checking that I don't call the wrong names. Let's leave that there. Dan Bernal,
Aye.
Anne Marie Dulage,
Yes.
Isabel Daron,
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colbury,
Yes.
Elena Flowers,
Yes.
David Higgins,
Yes.
Steve Julesgard,
Yes.
Dave Martin,
Yes.
Christine Miskowski,
Yes.
Al Rolette,
Yes.
Oz Stewart, Oz,
Yes.
Jonathan Thomas.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Thank you, Maria. Okay, that concludes the item with regard to our translational projects.
Chair, JT, we need to take a motion to close out the remaining applications. That is not to fund the applications that remain.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion to that effect?
I move that we close out the applications that remain.
Is there a second?
Second. Second, Martin.
Thank you. Questions or comments from members of the board? Any public comment? Hearing none. Maria, will you please call the roll?
Just a brief reminder, excuse me, Maria, to members to vote either yes or no, except with respect to any application in which you have a conflict.
Dan Bernal,
Aye.
Anne Marie Dulage,
Yes.
Isabel Daron,
Yes.
Mark Fisher Colbury,
Yes.
Elena Flowers,
Yes.
Elena would be yes, except for those with which I have a conflict.
That's correct. Yes, except those for which I have a conflict.
Thank you. David Higgins,
Yes.
Steve Julesgard,
Yes.
Dave Martin,
Yes.
Christine Miskowski,
Yes, except for those with which I have a conflict.
Al Rolette,
Yes.
Oz Stewart, Jonathan Thomas,
Yes.
Art Torres,
Aye.
no. Art, it's yes, except for those with which I have
I'm
a
sorry.
conflict.
Right.
Thank you. Carol
Yeah,
Watson.
I except for those for which I do not have a conflict.
Thank you. Carol Watson. Dan Whitaker. The motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So that then closes out the TRAN discussion and vote. We're now to general public comment on any items. Hearing none, I want to thank Maria B. and Doug and everybody who, as always, does a great job in facilitating this meeting. Without all of that work, none of this would be possible. Also want to give a special shout out to Art's daughter, Danielle, who just graduated cum laude from UC Hastings Law School on Saturday. So congratulations, Art.
Congratulations. Good job.
Well, we now have one elected official and one extra Juris Doctorate in the household. Very proud papa here.
As well you should be.
It's in the genes.
So with that, Maria, could you remind everybody what the date is of the June board meeting?
I sure can. It's June 18th. We can't wait to see you.
Okay. Well, thank you. And thanks very much to everybody who contributed here. And with that, we stand adjourned. Have a great rest of your May and early June, and we will see you June 18th. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.